Hello, good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to the Totally Premier League podcast, to a very, very special Totally Premier League podcast. And yes, this is the time we come when back in August we make predictions. Yes, we make predictions, and all I'll say is, oh dear. It has been a season where you can actually say it has been a very, very interesting season. We've had teams that have basically overperformed. We've had two very, very poor teams make a Europa League final. We've had basically teams ending their trophy droughts. Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Aberdeen, everywhere you look, everywhere you look. But yeah, we are here, and I'm delighted to say that joining me is Mr. Ali Logan from Pride of the South London Fan TV. How are you, Ali?
Evening, 12th again. Who gives a? Palace won the FA Cup. Waka waka,
And
hey, waka waka. 12th again. Who gives a?
yes.
Palace won the FA Cup. Yeah, no, very well. Pretty sure I predicted Palace to win the FA Cup as well.
Well, I can certainly say that I did not do that, but no, congratulations on that. And we will obviously get to Crystal Palace
Yeah,
as well. So yeah, this show is obviously reacting to our predictions. So what we'll do is we'll go up from 20th to first, and also we'll basically say where each person predicted, because obviously if you missed the show back in August, there was myself, there was Craig Beasley, who has unfortunately not been able to make it tonight due to technical issues, as well. Tone again has not been able to make it tonight, and obviously Ali as well. So yeah,
maybe
so
they
let's
just,
start.
Doug. Maybe they were just jealous because your team won the Premier League and my team won the FA Cup, and they just couldn't hack the outcomes.
Maybe that was the case, but no. Craig and Tone, if you're listening, hello to you both, and hope you are both doing very, very well. So let us begin, and yeah, 20th place. I think we have to say, I think it was inevitable that Southampton were always going to be struggling. I think when you come up from the playoffs as well, you're always going to be sort of almost in a sort of a real sense of catching up. And for me, Southampton were always destined to be 20th, weren't they, Ali?
Yeah, I think I think the word I used actually, I think I remember using this word to describe some of the bottom three on the podcast. As long as ago it was naive, and Southampton were definitely naive. I mean, Russell Martin. I think I've listened to him speak about football. He sounds intelligent, but he was naive in his approach. Southampton endorsed that approach. Then they decided to get rid of him, even though they'd endorsed that approach, and then their appointment of the person to replace, I'm gonna be honest, can't even remember his name, to replace Russell Martin was poor, was awful, shocking.
Mm.
And just, I mean, you got to feel for Southampton fans, really. It's just they must feel like they're glad in a way the season's over. And have they appointed a replacement yet? Oh, they have. Will Still, which is going to be incredibly interesting. Which may be a little bit on the naive front. I don't know. Like it, I think the whole bottom three. I'm sure we're going to get onto Ipswich and Leicester, but all three of them, the word I'd describe all three of them was not. As a Palace fan who knows what it takes to stay up in that first season back, naive.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Ivan Juric was the manager that took over from Russell Martin.
That's probably going to be a quiz question in about 5 years' time.
or who can look like Robert De Niro the most?
Yeah,
Because quite seriously, he
yeah.
does look like he does look like Robert De Niro. And obviously, congratulations to Russell Martin as well, becoming the Rangers manager as well. I don't think I'd ever thought it would say those words in that
Mate,
sentence. Russell Martin, the new Rangers manager.
just get relegated from the Premier League and you get these jobs like Vincent Company getting the Bayern Munich job off the back of getting Burnley relegated. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
what's going to be next? I mean, um, Daniel Farke's going to be like the new Dortmund manager after he relegates Leeds.
That could easily happen. I could easily happen. Just a very very quick one on Southampton as well. 12 points. They are now the second worst team in Premier League history, and this is a record, Ali. 30, 3-0, 30 Premier League defeats
Yeah,
this season.
shocking. I think that was what Southampton fans were pleased with. Really, was that they didn't get the lowest points tally. That was kind of their aim at the end of the season.
Yes. So, where did everyone have Southampton? Me, 20th, correct. Craig, Southampton, 20th, correct. Ali, Southampton, 20th, correct. Tone, 17th. Tone, I know you're listening. I know you said at the time that you've got Southampton mates as well. And I think you were kind of being a little bit kind, and to be honest, there. So yeah, 3 out of 4 predicted Southampton to be 20th. Just a quick one as well on Southampton. Do you think they'll struggle to get back up?
Well, I think there's a massive variable there in Will Still. Is he the is the noise around him justified? It's a very different league, the Championship, to the French league. Although the Sunderland managers managed to adapt to it, so I think he's very much an unknown variable. So it really will depend on whether Will Still's got the pedigree that a lot of people seem to think he has. He's a very cool manager, isn't he? With this whole thing, he played Football Manager and became manager. It will depend a lot on that. Depends who they keep. You do get the parachute payments, which gives those teams a big advantage, but you really have to try and come back within that first year or two. If not, you're in big trouble. So I don't know. I think
Mm,
I think maybe Southampton actually I would say are best equipped to come straight back up, because I feel like Leicester could get a points deduction. The Championship could finally get them after they got away with it by getting promoted and avoided it. And Ipswich, I don't know. I think Ipswich could do a Luton and really struggle next season.
it could be interesting. Speaking of which, we will get on to 19th place. It was Ipswich Town, 22 points they had. I had high hopes for Ipswich. I don't know about you, Ali. I know obviously we
Yeah,
will come on to obviously the bottom three in a
yeah.
wee bit with Leicester.
Mm,
But I had high hopes for Ipswich. I looked at their side when they came up. You had Liam Delap. You had sort of they had a really good spine. They had like Jacob Greaves,
mm,
Leif Davis. They had players that could actually establish to the championship.
mm.
Um, it just never got going for them, did it?
I think I kind of did at the beginning of the season. I mean, I think when I used the word naive, I was actually describing Ipswich fans. Like I heard some of them talking about Europe, and it's like it's a real slog when you first come up. I've only really the two teams off the top of my head who've been able to really make a go of it first season up playing beautiful football is Leeds under Bielsa and Fulham way back under Tigana. There's a
Mm,
long time ago. I felt there was a certain naivety about them, and I said that in the podcast. I did think they would be the team because I'm going to get this in now. I got the whole bottom three correct, but like I got to take my wins. I just felt like there was a certain naivety about them, and as a Palace fan with a good understanding of what that first season entails, and it is a bit horrible at times, and you really have to dig in. I wasn't sure they had that in them, but I did think they would be the team who go more to the wire. And what surprised me was how much they tailed off at the end. Because
mm.
mid-season, it did look like they would be the team who would give it the biggest fight.
Yeah, as I said, I thought they might be just maybe the only team out of the bottom three to potentially come, stay up, but wasn't to be. And obviously now, I look at Kieran McKenna, and it'll be interesting to see if he stays because he's actually been linked with he's been linked with Middlesbrough, and he's actually also been linked with obviously if rumors are to be believed, Thomas Frank has obviously been chased after by suitors.
Mm.
He has potentially been linked with Brentford. So Cengiz stock's gone kind of
Ooh,
down a little bit, Kieran McKenna.
that's a really good shout, Doug. That's a really good shout. I think that could happen. I think if Frank gets the Tottenham job, which I think he's definitely, if Ange goes, one of the top runners, I could see McKenna to Brentford. I hadn't heard that link. I think McKenna should go. I mean, he probably maybe should have taken the Chelsea job if the rumours are true that he got offered it. Um, I think
Hmm.
he next season is it's always a dangerous season if you don't come straight back up. He'd be going into a Brentford side established in the Premier League. He'd have better finances. He'd have more of a platform to play the football that he wants to play. And
Yeah,
you look at Rob Edwards, who was the Luton manager. He ended the year without a job. It could go the other way for McKenna. It's a pivotal moment in his managerial career. If he gets the Brentford job, he should take it.
100%, 100%. So where did everyone have Ipswich? Me, 17th. So wrong. Craig, 16th. Wrong. Um, yourself, Ali, 18th. Finished 19th. And Tone, 16th. So yeah, 1 out of 4. It's not too bad. But we've all come on to. I have to say, I've been very, very disappointed. Now, I know I've got lots of Leicester fans, and obviously Neil, obviously if you
Yeah.
are obviously watching or listening. It was a car crash of a season for Leicester. I mean, going from Enzo Maresca to Steve Cooper felt like a good idea at the time. But it just didn't work. And then I've got to say, the most catastrophic of errors was to give Ruud van Nistelrooy the job, especially after watching what he did at Manchester United. Look, it's all right being like an interim, but Ruud van Nistelrooy, not a manager. He's not been a manager in the Premier League before.
Mm.
Um, and I just think the recruitment was completely off. I suppose the only sort of shining light, really, is Jamie Vardy. 200 goals and 500 appearances. Not a bad way to go out. But Leicester, again, just like Southampton, it felt like they were destined to go down.
I I think I think appointing Cooper was a bad idea because Leicester fans were never going to take to him. I think if you looked
Yeah,
at footballing and what we were talking about, when you come up, you have to be pragmatic. I think it was a good appointment, and I actually think, and as you said, we've got Leicester friends like Neil and Anne, and but I've been quite honest on my social media about it. I think it's the first season fans of a club have to take ownership for their relegation as well. I understand when fans get frustrated. I don't go to Leicester every week. I don't see the games, and I do get their board have made a series of big mistakes as well. But that
yeah,
fan base were very for Cooper going, and I'm not saying he would have kept them up because I think in the end it needed about 40 points to stay up, and I don't know if they had the squad to get there, but they certainly would have given it a much better fight under Cooper. They weren't in the relegation zone when he left, and they might talk about fixtures and things like that. But as a Palace fan as well, I'm well positioned to discuss managers who somehow get points even though they're playing awful football. We had Roy Hodgson for years. And
yeah,
sometimes there's a time and a place for a manager, and there's a time and a place to get rid of a manager. And it wasn't get the first season back. Once they had Cooper in, they should have stuck with him to the end of the season. And I actually think a lot of Leicester fans, even though they don't want to acknowledge it, will acknowledge it. I think Ant has acknowledged it now that they probably, I think I saw him write it on Twitter, that they would have been better to go with Cooper until the end of the season. Then get rid by all means. But
yeah,
what you've alluded to, the most kamikaze thing they did was to then get Ruud van Nistelrooy in, who might be a good manager. He might. I hate it when young managers get written off. You look at Frank Lampard; he got very written off, and he's gone back at Coventry and has shown some sort of pedigree again. Okay, he didn't get them up. I think we need to give young managers a chance to develop. But he probably should have taken the job. It was probably a bad move on
yeah,
his part to join a club who are one of the relegation candidate favourites mid-season. You're never going to get your ideas and your philosophies in because you're in a dogfight. So all rounds there were just terrible decisions made. But everyone connected to Leicester Football Club, I'm sorry, kind of got the outcome that their actions deserved.
Yeah. I think as well when I look at Leicester, the bailiffs are waiting. I think it's the safest thing to say. The bailiffs are definitely waiting.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be a big points deduction that they could get.
yeah,
I've read stories, and it could to potentially be sort of maybe 12 to 15 points.
mm-hmm.
Now we know that Sheffield United had a points deduction last
Yeah,
season. They got into the playoffs, so
mm,
Leicester 12, 15 points. That could be interesting. Actually, I
mm,
was speaking to a Leicester fan the other day there.
mm.
He fears they could potentially go back to League One the way it's going.
Look,
Um,
what be interesting the
so
appointment they go for, because they were talking about Russell Martin, and I was like,
yes,
I was like, have you not learned your lessons? Like that's the guy who started the season at Southampton, and it clearly didn't work. Like if they can get him, if they can get him, they should get Sean Dyson. Sean
yeah,
Dyche as well lives around that area. I think he lives near Nottingham, so a lot of fans were talking about him going to Forest at one point a few years ago. He lives around that area. He's faced points deductions with Everton. Okay, it's not the most exciting managerial appointment, but it's the most pragmatic. And actually, on social media, I am seeing quite a few Leicester fans saying that they want Dyche.
there you go. So where did everyone have Leicester City? Me, 19th. They finished 18th. Craig, spot on, 18th. Ali, 19th. Tone, bottom. So we can say that we had Leicester in the bottom three, but obviously well done to you for obviously getting all the bottom three.
Thank you.
Maybe not in the right order, but still the only one out of us four to actually get the
As I
bottom
said,
three. So
I felt all of the bottom three were being quite naive, and that's what transpired. I think during the course of the season, I mean that's what everyone, all the pundits, everyone have said is they've been very naive, and the promoted teams need to change their approach. And next season I think it will be harder. Um, I think
yeah,
it will be. I think for teams like Palace, we've got to be more alert, even though we should be looking up now, Palace. But I think clubs under 10th and below have to be more alert, because I think Leeds will always bring something to the table. Parker will be pragmatic. Sunderland, I think, might struggle a bit more, but it'll be interesting to see how they get on.
yeah. I'm just happy Sunderland are up because of my uncle. My uncle's a born and bred Sunderland fan, so I'm very happy as well. So yes, the relegated three, all three promoted teams went straight back down for the second consecutive season. I think that's the first time it's ever happened
Yeah,
as
it
well.
it needs one of the promoted teams to do something next season, because it is getting a bit like that. You can see people starting to arguing against promotion and relegation. It gives that argument credence, which we don't want.
No, absolutely not. So 17th. Well, did we expect this team to finish 17th? Tottenham Hotspur. Well, first things first, congratulations on the Europa League. I think that's the first thing. And yeah, anyone beating Manchester United in the final is always nice to see. Man United, but we'll get to you shortly. But as a season, 22 defeats, and I think as well, you have to say Tottenham definitely just threw away the league. They were basically focused on the Europa League from I think it probably about January onwards, because they had a feeling that they would maybe go on and maybe get to the final. And obviously, fair play to Ange. He did say that he wins things in his second season, but Tottenham in the league. I mean, you obviously beat them at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. How bad have they been this season?
Yeah, I mean, we played them like really just after that. I think they played the semi final of the Europa.
Hmm.
So they rested a lot of players, but there was still no excuse for being as bad as they were. Like they were shocking, and I came away from that game thinking, yeah, Angie's going to go, because it was awful. Like there was no patterns of play. If I'd gone and watched my team play like that, I would have been really angry. Um, they have had injuries, so I do give him that. They have had injuries to key players who are very good players, and that does have impacts on clubs. People, you can say it's an excuse, but it does have a big impact on teams. But there was no excuse to be as bad as they were then when they played us, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting what Daniel Levy does. They do have a lot of momentum now, and momentum's big in football. But what I would say is, does that momentum carry over a pre-season into another season? For me, it reminds me a lot of the Ten Hag United situation this time last year when they won the FA Cup and he got a stay of execution.
Yeah,
Maybe they just need to be ruthless, because maybe at this point Levy should be, he absolutely will be, not believing his luck that he's somehow qualified for the Champions League and got all that Champions League money, and now he'll be thinking we need to stay there. And is Ange the man to keep them there? I'm not sure.
yeah. Could be a very very interesting next couple of days. I think Ange Postecoglou is actually still on holiday at the moment. So
He might be
yeah,
staying on
that
holiday.
yeah, he might.
Staying on holiday.
Right. Oh, let's get into our predictions for Tottenham. Me fifth, -12. Craig fourth, -13. Yourself, Ali, seventh,
Oh,
-10, and Tone -12. So safe to say, I think this has been our worst prediction, to say the very, very least. I don't think anyone kind
but
of seen
to be fair
Tottenham
to
finishing
us,
17th.
his first season, to be fair to us and to be fair to Ange, his first season was pretty good, wasn't it? I mean, they just missed out on Champions League football. I mean, there
Yeah,
was that whole thing where he was annoyed with the fan base who wanted them to lose, so Arsenal didn't win the league. So in that crucial game, so I think where we weren't was probably fair shouts at the time. No one expected them to be as bad as they were, and they did have injuries. They did have injuries that didn't help them. That like exasperated the situation.
yeah, 100%. 100%. But yeah, Tottenham 17th, but Europa League win. So congratulations to them there. 16th, Wolves. Well, it started very poorly for Gary O'Neill. I think everyone, the people kind of remember what happened to Gary O'Neill. Wolves, I think, were bottom when obviously Vitor Pereira came in. Vitor Pereira came in, and they actually, believe it or not, they actually went on a 5 or 6 match winning run. Now, I've got to say, Wolves are obviously a side where you look at them and they're probably always going to be sort of mid-table. Like I know the Nuno days, obviously they were sort of getting in the heights of obviously the Europa League as well. But fair play to Wolves. I think they had a good end to the season. Start of the season, I would say they didn't have the best, but there's something just saying to me, Ali, they could be a team that maybe struggles like next season because obviously eight Nuri's away, and now obviously Cunha's away as well.
Yeah, I think again, yeah. I mean, what's happened to Wolves is, they were, when their owners came in, they were throwing money at it. I mean, I remember when Nuno was linked to Palace at one point, and there were like
Hmm.
Wolves fans like going, "Well, why would he go there?" And we'd finished like just like one place below them or something. I remember I questioned them on social media for it, and I got like this deluge of Wolves fans on me, like, "Oh, we're so much bigger than you." Like, well, look now, we've won the FA Cup. Where are you all now? But like,
Mm.
in all seriousness, it's just been weird what's happened to them. Really, like it's just been weird their sort of decline. Because they are going to sell two very key players now. Just when you thought, oh, okay, Wolves could be back on the up because their manager's done a really good job. They were playing some really nice football towards the end of the season. They're taking out arguably their two of their best players. So key for them will be who they get and who they sign. I think we'll talk about Bournemouth in a moment. They sold Solanke, but instantly signed Ivan Nilsson. So they were
Yeah.
okay, more than okay. Wolves need to do something similar now for these two players they're selling, or they will find it hard because, as we just alluded to, I think the three coming up will do better than the three that came up last season.
Yeah, I agree. So where do we have Wolves? Me, 15th. So very, very close. Craig, 14th. Uh, Ali, spot on,
Right.
16th.
Yeah. They did
And
quite well at
Tone
the
had them
bottom side.
15th.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Tone had them 15th as well. But yeah, watch this space. I think Wolves definitely need a good summer as well because it feels like they're getting picked off a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, with Eight Nuri and obviously Cunha going 15th, and this makes me well. Put it into context. Manchester United finished 15th with 18 defeats, but a better goal difference than Wolves. That's why obviously they finished above Wolves. But season this season has been a car crash. Um, I think the fact that they kept on to Ten Hag until at least October was far too long. They should have got rid of him. I think they should have got rid of him, especially after the Liverpool game, because the fact that Arne Slot went to Old Trafford and then basically came out and said, "Oh, we knew how Manchester United were going to play. We knew how to work them out." I think the fact that his tactics were worked out was really, really poor. Um, Recruitment has been absolutely shocking,
Mm.
absolutely shocking for Manchester United. Xerxes looks like a good player on the inside.
Mm.
Didn't look great at all. Mazraoui has been a very good signing. I'll give them that.
Mm.
Mateus Delict has been. I think he's been good. I don't think he's been great. But I th- I have to say, Ruben Amorim coming in mid-season was the worst possible decision he could have made. He should have stayed at Sporting until at least the summer. Maybe even just give Ruud van Nistelrooy the job until the end of the season and see how they do. But
Mm.
the fact that they lost to Tottenham in a Europa League final, no one is going to let them live that down as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, Manchester United. I mean, obviously last season, you beat them 4-0
Mm.
at Selhurst Park. Um, this season, just been bad to worse. I thought last season was bad when they finished eighth, but to finish 15th, a Manchester United side,
It's been quite funny though.
hilarious,
Yeah.
absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, I think Amarin is the right appointment, but the wrong time. And it's
Yeah,
interesting for me as a Palace fan because he plays a very similar system to Glasner. So during the course of the season, when pundits were saying he needs to convert back, I was thinking, well, no, I can see what he's trying to do. He just doesn't quite have the right players yet. So I do think he deserves a summer to get his players in because that's the point where he should have joined them. I was thinking before this podcast whether United would have been better off waiting to appointing him this summer and just like you were saying, get an interim appointment. And I think there's a chance they could have won that Europa League
yeah,
because that
I think so.
final, that final was there for no disrespect to Tottenham, and it has annoyed me a little bit. Some of the disrespect people have given to Tottenham and Man United's runs. They've both beaten good European teams. Tottenham beat Frankfurt along the way, who actually won the Europa League not that long ago with Glasner. But that
Yeah,
final, United, Tottenham weren't great. Like, and you just felt like, one of the people being talked about just to come back temporarily was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer before he went to Besiktas. And I think he got to a final in the Europa League. I think that he might have won that.
hmm
And this is controversial, even Ten Hag might have won that final, given what he did in the FA Cup final. I just think I defended Amarin all season as if and I thought, he did quite well in the run up to the final. But that final was a big moment, and the best managers take the big moments. And it's a massive, massive moment for that football club because they needed the money that the Champions League would have brought. Um,
yeah,
but I do think there's something there with Emery. I do think he's a clever manager. I can see what he's trying to do with the system, but they need to get the right players. And actually, Man City signing El Nouri, that's the player United need. They need that
Yeah.
kind of wing back to make their system work. If you look at Palace, if we take Daniel Munoz out, our whole system does not work. United don't have that player. So until they get that
No.
player, that wing back system isn't going to work.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Cunha and Burma are very good signings, but they're
Yeah.
going to need a lot more, and they need to get rid of a lot of deadwood. Right, where did we have Man United? I had them sixth, so -9. Craig had them in seventh, -8. You had Man United in fifth, so -10. And Tone actually, fair play to Tone because he actually said ninth, which I think at the time, me, Craig, and yourself, like, actually looked at Tony like, oh, okay. Um, but no, fair play to Tony. He could see Manchester United for what they were and what was happening to them. And by the way, their ownership is an absolute disgrace,
Uh,
getting rid of so much staff as well.
yeah.
But anyway, we'll move away from Manchester United and we'll talk about another United because West Ham United 14th.
Yeah.
And this is one of those moments, Ali, where you're like,
Mm,
we got West Ham completely and utterly wrong.
mm. Yeah, I mean they were perceived as having one of the best transfer windows, weren't they?
Yeah,
Um, their managerial appointment was always strange because they got rid of Moyes and they kind of got the Spanish Moyes in. Like it was like, what's going to
yeah,
change? And I live in Essex, so I live in a West Ham area, and I picked up very quickly that they weren't taken to this new manager. And I
yeah,
think it's just been a very, very almost like non-entity season for them. Like nothing's happened. They weren't ever really near the relegation zone. They weren't playing very good football. I actually went to Palace away there. I think we beat them, and fans left it like early and looked so disillusioned. And the thing about that stadium as well, if it's not going well, like when they won the Europa Conference League, it's an awful stadium to watch football in. And I think it's been a
mm,
thoroughly miserable season for West Ham. But like Amarin, Potter deserves a transfer window in the summer and the season to show what he can do. But I don't know. I think it just be sort of similar position for them next season. Really, I think it might be a season of building towards something rather than something happening for them next season.
yeah. I think so. Yeah, it was. Lopetegui was a strange appointment. I
Mm,
thought at the time it was a very strange appointment. I know what happened at Wolves. He obviously left before the start of the season. It just didn't feel like the right appointment. So where did everyone have West Ham? I had them eighth, so -6. Craig had them 10th. Actually, Ali, you had the same as well as me, eighth.
did I have him?
And Tone had them in eighth as well. So yeah, West Ham, very poor season.
I'm
Very
surprised I put
very.
them that high.
I am as well. I thought I would have had them maybe top half, but
I think
yeah,
that a lot of these predictions are influenced by transfer window, and that I will talk about that when we get to Bournemouth, for example. But I think some of these
yeah,
predictions must have been heavily influenced by what had gone on in the transfer window in the last few weeks before we did them.
absolutely. 13th, bit of a better season, Everton. I think, let's be honest, the football that Sean Dyche had been playing, I think it was effective to a degree. I think it was always going to be a sort of a time where it was always going to sort of tail off, and they just needed that lift, that lift, and the lift that came in, David Moyes, he transformed them. I think I read. I don't know if this is true, but I think they had 9 wins, 5 draws, and 3 defeats
Mm.
under his second tenure. So to 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 basically say that David Moyes has turned Everton around would not be an understatement. It would be a fact.
Yeah, Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think even Dyche himself said, and you have to give Dyche credit for the job that he did. He had Everton with points deductions and all sorts, and got them through that period. And now Dyche is gone. I think Everton fans recognise that and are grateful for that. But it just felt like sometimes clubs just need a change and a swift in momentum. And that's what they've got. And Moyes did very, very well. But I do, I think it does seem very fitting that Moyes is going to take them into the new stadium. But I do think it'll be interesting next season. It reminds me a little bit of when Roy Hodgson came back after Vieira left Palace and had a great run.
Yeah,
Can Moyes now carry it over into next season? And that's going to be key. And sometimes changing stadiums can be hard those seasons, but you can't doubt that he's turned the mood around, the performances around, and everything around. And I actually think they could have a good few years under Moyes now. I don't think they'll be in the relegation scraps anymore. I think they could be entering the second Moyes era, and it'd be kind of nice to see Moyes end his career at Everton.
it would be. It would be very, very nice. But yeah, I think they've definitely turned it around. And yeah, sad to see Goodison Park go. But it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to their new stadium. So where did everyone have Everton? Well, I had Everton in 14th, so not a million miles away.
No,
Um, Craig had them 11th. As did you, Ali. Actually, you had them 11th, and Tone, if you're listening, you had them spot on in 13th
oh well done.
place. So well done, Tone. Well, we know which team's coming next. I'll leave the floor to you. I'll leave the floor to you because FA Cup win, your first major trophy. Has it sunk in? The floor is yours. The floor is yours.
12th again. Who gives a? We won the FA Cup. Waka waka. Nah, look, no, it hasn't sunk in. Hasn't sunk in at all. It's kind of beginning to sink in. It's been a very surreal few weeks. It was just incredible. Like being there when we won the FA Cup was just amazing. Like one of the best days of my life. I have to say that because obviously wedding day. But it was just unbelievable, and just like they call football the beautiful game, right? And I've
Yeah.
really seen the beauty of football in the last few weeks. With this, like from the celebrations that everyone saw on the television, it really was like that. Like generations and generations. Like I was alongside my dad, whom we watched Palace in through administrations together, and we never really thought we wondered whether we'd ever get that moment, and to get that moment, and my dad only got I was in the stadium. My dad only managed to get these two tickets together on the Thursday. It was incredibly special, and it's been a great season for other clubs as well. Like I was in a bar in London when Newcastle won the Carabao Cup, and not a great moment for you, Doug, obviously, but that was amazing as well. There were Geordies who had come all the way to London who hadn't even got a ticket at Wembley, who were in this bar by London Bridge Station, and there were families there in tears. Like it's amazing to see, like in society where people say people don't really talk anymore, to see people from different generations sharing those moments. And one of my favorite moments of it actually was at the parade, which was so surreal. Like you talk about how it's been surreal. The parade, seeing the open top bus through South London, again, like a moment where you're standing there, like I never thought I'd see this. I had a chat with a guy who saw George Best play at Sellers Park, and he,
Wow.
yeah, and he said to me, he said, I never ever thought I'd see this, and it's just been unbelievable. But yeah, unbelievable in terms of the FA Cup, and we did get a sense that it might happen. What I would say is, I felt due to our poor start in the league, I felt English football pundits, fans of other clubs, slept on Oliver Glasner. Palace fans,
Hmm.
we knew what we had from the end of the last season on the run that we went on and how intelligent he was in the way that he would deploy players, and how good the system was, what we had. So even when we had the bad start, we kept the faith and wanted the club to keep the faith. Because if you talk, there's some good managers at the moment in the Premier League. You've got Thomas Frank, you've got the Bournemouth manager. But if you talk about pedigree in the Premier League, beyond Slot and Guardiola, Glasner's right up there. He's won a Europa League,
Yeah,
Frankfurt, and I didn't think he got anywhere near the credit for that he was deserved. And I guess maybe that was because we started very slow in the Premier League, which is why we finished 12th.
yeah, but no, fair play to keeping him on. I know you started very very sloppily, and then you managed to turn it around, and I think. I think as well. We all know the sort of the Palace from last season. You started very slowly, and then ended very very well. But to end the season
Yeah.
very very well, and to get a
Like
trophy as
there's a
well.
stat, isn't there? Like in 2025, we're right up there in terms of if there was a table for 2025. But we have to sort that out. And Glasner said that himself. Like there was a lot of variables as to why we did start the season slow. One of them was we didn't do our transfer dealings early enough, and he's already stated that he wants that done better this summer. Obviously, like as well, we had a lot of players at the Euros. The most Premier League club in terms of players for the England squad. We had Mateta at the Olympics, which affected
Yep.
things. We had Daniel Munoz, who was unbelievable this season, and Jefferson Lerma went deep in the Copa America for Colombia. Um, and also, what I don't think has been spoken about enough is that we lost Michael Olise. And
Yeah.
what he's done at Bayern Munich, I will confidently sit here and say he's in the top 5 right-sided players in Europe right now. We lost
Hmm.
Elise, and we've been able to win the FA Cup. When Saka got injured for Arsenal, everyone wrote them off the Premier League. So that makes what Glasner's done even more incredible. But you have to also give credit to Dougie Friedman, who's really helped build this squad with his recruitment. He's now gone. Another one that he got that was questioned was Ismail Assar, who was unbelievable in the semi-final against Aston Villa. So both Dougie and Glasner are two very intelligent football men. And I think people slept on us, but that kind of suited us because we crept in and we won the FA Cup and have had our best moment in history. So I don't really care about the 12th, to be honest.
Nah, congratulations.
It was a
So
little
where
bit
did everyone have?
frustrating because I felt like if we'd had a bit of a better start, we could have got the 8th or the 7th. Not that it mattered in the end. But yeah.
Yeah. So where did everyone have Palace? Well, I had them 10th. Craig had them 12th. So well done to Craig. You had them 9th. And actually, Tone had them 10th. So, yeah. So well done to Craig for getting Crystal Palace right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think next season sort of build on and try and get a top half finish.
Listen, Glasner is a serial winner, isn't he? Like even on that last day, he was absolutely fuming with them when we gave away when we were 1-0 up at Anfield and we gave it away. But I think he will want to go higher. Obviously, there's variables again. Is can we hang on to our best players? Obviously, we've got to manage the Thursday to Sunday playing in Europe, which I'm not naive about. Other clubs who've done that for the first time have found it tough, but we've got the manager to do it. You know, he's used to Europa League with Frankfurt. We do need to the soundings are we are going to be building the squad and making some good signings. So yeah, we need to look upwards, but we need to start the season better.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. 11th, Fulham. Another good season. Another good season. In fact, 54 points, which is very, very good for Fulham. I've got to say, Fulham were the best team that came in the Premier League at Anfield. I thought they were really, really good. They played very well that day. I think 2-2 draw. I was at the game. Something about Marco Silva for me. I think he's a really good manager. I think he had a hard time at Everton. I think he was unlucky to obviously get relegated with Hull. I think he's kind of turned this Fulham side, around. They're a really, really good, expansive football style of play that he has. Do you think Marco Silva could be a manager that could be touted very, very soon by other clubs?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been whispers about that, hasn't there? I think was he linked with a Saudi club, Silva, and I think as well he was also one of the names attached to the Tottenham job as well. Although I
Yeah,
think more likely to be Thomas Frank if Ange does go. Look, what I'd say on Fulham as well, you alluded to how many points they got. It was actually it was Palace's record points total, and we came 12th. I think that's
Hmm.
a testament to how good and how improved those sides from like 12th to 8th have been. And we'll talk about obviously Brentford and Bournemouth in a minute as well, and the quality of them. And Fulham did have a good season. They tailed off. I think I've got a very good friend who's a Fulham fan, and I think he was frustrated with the way they ended their season. And of course, Palace beat them in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. And the
Yeah.
first 20 minutes, Fulham were on top, and we kind of did what we did in the final and broke with Eze, and then we ended up dominating them really in the end. But a very good football team with a very good football manager. But I think whilst teams like Man United and Tottenham have gone down, a good core 4-5, 4-6 have really improved, and I include Fulham in that.
Yep, I definitely include Fulham in that. So where did we have Fulham? I had them 13th, so not a million miles away. Craig had them 15th. You had them 14th, and Tone had them 12th. So again, not a million miles away. And it'd be interesting to see sort of what players Fulham can get
Yeah,
next season.
I actually when we
10th.
did it, I found that kind of 11th to 15th the hardest bit to predict.
Yeah, I did as well. But 10th, Brentford.
Mm.
Honestly, another fantastic season. Um, I've got to say that front three of Mbermo, Vissa, and Shada is very, very impressive. Mbermo got 20 league goals this season for Brentford, which is absolutely amazing. Um, I've got to say now that yes, they are going to lose Mbermo. Looks like he's going to obviously go to Manchester United. But I don't fear for them because look, we will get onto where we put Brentford. I did say at the time my only concern was when Ivan Toney was going to go. Now we
Yeah,
didn't know at the time where he was going to go. Was he going to go to Saudi? Was he going to go to Was he going to go to another Premier League club? Um, but actually, if you look at it, they didn't really miss him. Because you've got Mbermo, you've got Shada, you've got Vissa, and then obviously in the midfield you've got Damsgaard, who I thought was very very good, and then at the back you obviously had Nathan Collins, you had Set Vandenberg. I'm going to give him a wee mention. I think he's been excellent. Then obviously Mark Flecken and goal, and now they've obviously got Quivin Kelleher as well. I don't think anyone expected Brentford to have the season that they have had, Ali. How impressed have you been with them?
yeah, really, really impressed, and I think it's quite similar to what we'll talk about in Bournemouth at the moment in terms of the Ivan Toney thing. Is that Bournemouth had the Solanke going to Tottenham hanging over them, and that might have influenced our predictions. But Thomas
Yeah,
Frank, the way that I said that I feel the Premier League have slept on Glasner. I do think Thomas Frank obviously has a lot of admirers, but I don't think people realise how good he is. I mean, whenever I've watched Brentford at Palace, I've been so impressed with the way that he not only he set them up at the beginning of the games, but how he'd change it mid-game with the substitutions that he'd make. Like suddenly, like games would be flipped, and you suddenly be like, "Oh my god, how are Brentford all over us? Like they're all on the ball. Like they've got all these numbers in midfield. Like he's a clever manager." Um,
yeah,
and I think actually, do you know what? When there was potentially a fight for the Conference League for 8th place, I thought Brentford were on course to do that. I think they only tailed off because we won the FA Cup and took it away from them. Like, I think that
yeah,
psychologically must have been a massive blow for their last few games. I think their
yeah. But
season,
no,
if if Palace hadn't reached glorious heights, their season could have been even better
yeah,
than we're
it,
talking
it could it could well have been. It could well have been.
about.
This is where this could be very interesting. Where we put Brentford, I had them relegated. Apologies, Bees fans. I had you relegated, but again, that was based on the fact that you had lost Ivan Toney.
I
Um,
remember you saying that now, and I remember because I've always, as I said, been a quite big fan of Thomas Frank, and I remember that being one of the ones I was just thinking, what Dougie, no, like, but
yeah,
but oh well, mate,
yeah.
learn. I put Bournemouth 17th, which we'll talk about in a minute. So yeah.
Craig had them 17th. Um, you had them 13th, so not a million miles away. And Tone was on the same wavelength as me. He had them relegated. He had them 18th. Yeah. So sorry, Bees fans. Sorry. And by the way, I am absolutely so happy for Kelleher that he's gone to Brentford. I think he's going to be fabulous for you. And yeah, I'm gonna follow his progress very very closely as well. Ninth, very good season. Bournemouth. Another team where at one point they were destined to potentially be in a European place. Unfortunately, didn't quite happen for them, but they beat Arsenal. They beat Manchester City at the Vitality. Not many teams can say that they did that. And again, I think as well. I think the kind of said of our predictions was basically on the basis of Solanke.
Mm.
But again, I kind of allude to what I said about Brentford. They didn't miss Solanke. They brought in Evan Nielsen, and for me, Evan Nielsen had a very, very good season. Cliver, I have to say, he's been one of the finds of the season. Like he's been really, really good, really good. And finally, somebody knows how to play Ryan Christie in the right position. Steve
Mm.
Clark plays him everywhere. Plays him wide right, plays him wide left, plays him centrally. No, 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 no. Put him in a holding midfielder position role, and he will thrive. He has been absolutely fantastic. Hoyson's away now. Looks like Liverpool are going to get Kirkez as well. Bournemouth, fabulous, fabulous season.
Yeah, I mean, they again when we're talking about these teams, they were 8th to 12th. Just they've improved the quality of the Premier League a lot, you know. And these teams have made it much more competitive. And yeah, they were. I think in a minute we're going to talk about my prediction. And I was heavily influenced by Solanke going, but one of the things a lot of Crystal Palace fans talked about and was quite jealous of at the time was how quickly, as you've alluded to, they reacted to Solanke going to get Ivan Nilsson in. It was very
Mm.
quick recruitment. And from what I understand, they're already dealing with this fullback situation. They've got a fullback from France coming in with high pedigree that I saw a lot of Palace fans go, that's a great signing. So whatever they're doing in recruitment is very good as well, I would say. And it just seems to be a well-run, like Brentford, a well-run football club. And I think I think they'll be good again next season. I think the thing for Bournemouth and Brentford is can they both hang on to their manager? Because they can't offer their managers European football like we can offer Glasgow next season.
Again. Um, so where did we have Bournemouth? I had them 11th, so not a million miles away. Craig, well done, mate. Ninth, well done. Obviously wanted to back his club, so well done to Craig for that. Um, Ali 17th,
That's my
but you
that
obviously you had.
I'm really glad Craig's not here because that was my worst one. I'm quite relieved, to be honest, that Craig didn't make it on in the end. Because that was the one I was fearing being brought up. In my defence, it was literally like the day or two before that the Solanke to Spurs links started. Because I think I had them more mid-table and shifted them down in reaction to that. But as I said, Bournemouth reacted really well, and I'm pleased they did. They're a great little football club, and yeah, good luck to them.
Yeah, 100%. And Tone had them 11, so again, not a million miles away. Eighth, Brighton. Again, my prediction on Brighton was basically based on the fact that this manager that came in, Fabian Hersler, I hadn't really sort of like heard of him. Obviously, I know from obviously SC Pauli as well. They have just missed out on actually European football. I think actually, but 4 points, 4 points that they missed out on. Um, I know, and obviously Brighton fans will be sick of the sight of obviously Palace winning a trophy. But be reasonable. How have you found them this season, Brighton?
I've got nothing to say, Doug, apart from have you ever seen Brighton win the cup? All I've got to say.
Yeah, I've got.
No, okay, I'll say something else. Um, Look, it's just I just can't get beyond how funny it is that we won the cup and they didn't get Europe because of us. I've got to be a bit careful because we've got this UEFA investigation into the multi shares of Texter, which threatens us in Europe. So there is a thing
Mm,
where potentially Brighton could get back in, but I don't think it will happen. I think we'll be all right. But yeah, I think Brighton fans were initially quite happy with the new manager. They're not quite happy. The other thing about Brighton, they spent 200 million or something, and
yes.
they've still not won a cup.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like I think Fabian Herzl was a good appointment. I think he certainly got what Brighton were all about, and I think it was a gamble at the time, but
What
I
what I
think
would
he's done pretty well.
say on that is I try and be reasonable. Is for obviously I get a lot of Brighton stuff coming up on my social media because you get like Palace fans and Brighton fans going at each other. Even though there's just no argument anymore, is there? Now that we've won the FA Cup, but what I would say is I don't think all Brighton fans are completely sold on him, the manager. And what I would
Mm.
say is what will happen now is the reverse of what happened to us. So you remember when we saw like the banners coming out when Roy Hodgson was back at the club? Only part of it, but part of that would have been stimulated from the fact that Brighton were in Europe and we saw them getting into Europe and us sort of stagnating or just staying where we were. Now that we've won a cup, Brighton fans are going to hurt from that. They're not completely sold on this manager, so I think he will be one if he doesn't have a good start next season. Who you'll see going? I think he'll stay on over the summer, but he needs a good start.
Yes. So I think when I look at Brighton, I think it's very, very interesting when I look at what they've done in the transfer market. Look, Matt O'Reilly was a lot of money.
Mm.
I think it was round about 35 million. I think that they got for him. Um, what I will say about Brighton, though, I think they have had a good season. Um, but in the end, they just didn't. They just missed out on Europe altogether, unfortunately.
No,
Yeah, where did we have Brighton?
there's no unfortunately about it. It was a great.
Where did we have Brighton? I and yourself had them 12th.
Okay.
Craig had them 13th, and Tone had them 14th. So
Mm.
not a million miles away, but I think again it kind of was all sort of dependent on sort of like Herzler coming in and seeing what he could do.
If
But
I look
one
at it
team, what?
objectively, though, I'll try and look at it objectively. And you're talking about the manager. That's quite good, isn't it? Eighth, particularly
Yeah,
in the context of what we've been saying in that 8 to 12th. Those teams like Fulham, Brentford, Bournemouth, and ourselves have been so good as well. But actually, you have to. If I looked at it objectively, I'd say actually some of those Brighton fans, you could say on the surface, as not as someone who's watched Brighton all season. The only time I've seen Brighton this season is when we beat them 2 times, once with 9 men. But it you have to say objectively that that's for a first season in the Premier League, young manager, quite good.
absolutely, absolutely. So if you thought Brighton had a very very good season, this team definitely had one of their better seasons, and it has to be said that they have been absolutely fantastic. Nottingham Forest finishing seventh, and I know people will say that they did have a bit of a fall off between now and the end of the season, but I mean, if you'd said to me, Ali, that Nottingham Forest would climb 10 places from last season, I think everyone would have probably said you're absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, I think I remember saying Forest would do okay, but I didn't think they would do as well as they did. And I think one of the reasons I said I knew they'd do okay is they had quite a few good acquisitions for fantasy football. But one player who just kept going and going was Chris Wood. And I thought every week on fantasy football, I was like, I won't do it again. And then sure enough, it get loads of points.
Yeah, and I think you've got to say that one of the signs of the summer was definitely Milenkovic, who came in from Serie A Fiorentina. I thought he was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, him and the goalkeeper as well was very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, and Alanga is obviously very direct. Um, Gibbs, Hudson Odoi as well has done. He was one who interested me because there was a few links with him to Palace. I think he's done well. Um, yeah, they've done really really well. It's just a shame they bottled it at the end, and now their owners looking to try and take it out on Palace through the courts.
I have no words to describe Mr. Marinakis, especially for what happened after the Leicester game, where obviously he came onto the pitch and almost looked like he confronted Nuno. Um,
Yeah.
do you think Nuno will be there at the start of next season?
I think he will, but then it seems to me like there's definitely something going on there. I feel like if he has a few,
Mm,
all it will need is a few bad results, and that owner will strike. It's such a shame because I love Forest. I lived in Nottingham for 3 years of my life. They are my second favourite team in the Premier League. So for them, this owner to go at us in this way and sort of create this friction it's not what I like. And also, you go to Forest, it's one of the old school grounds of an old school atmosphere. Forest. I've even seen Forest fans say on social media over the last few days, how embarrassing it is that they're trying to get involved in this. And you got to feel for them. Really, it's such a shame because such a great time for them as a club. But he just has this way of putting a dark cloud over them.
yeah, absolutely. I think I think he's kind of the same with the Olympiacos as well.
Mm.
Um, he's definitely a cutthroat owner. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I think it'd be a shame if Nuno went. But it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
But
Um,
I do think for us, it was a shame they waned at the end of the season. But I think it's
yeah,
an exciting season for them. That Conference Cup's there for them to win European nights at the City Ground. Um, and as I said, I think Forest fans are good fans, and you can even see Forest fans on social in the dirge of social media saying this is ridiculous. Like we just got to get on with it and play our European football in the Conference Cup. And I think it'd just be interesting to see whether they'll have anyone go for their players. Like there was a rumor, wasn't there, that Newcastle were back in for Elanga.
yeah. City, I think a rig for Gibbs White, but I think that's going quite quiet because obviously
Mm.
they've gone and signed Reinders
Yeah,
as well. So I think it's looking like Forest might have a few of their players maybe moving on. Elanga especially. But no, fantastic season. Now this is the interesting bit. Where
mm,
do we all have Forest? Um, I had them 16th, so that was 9 places off where they finished. Obviously, they finished 7th. Craig had them 19th, so that was 12 positions. When I said most of our worst predictions were probably Spurs and Manchester United, yeah, Craig, Nottingham Forest, 19th, not good. Ali, you had them 15th,
yeah,
which wasn't too bad, to say at the very, very least. And then Tone had them 19th as well, so two people had Nottingham Forest to be
yeah.
relegated. But I think at the start of the season, you would have probably said at the start of the season that they were definitely going to be in a relegation battle, but they absolutely shocked us what happened to them.
I remember being quite surprised at those two predictions because I didn't think they would be in a relegation battle, but I think my prediction of
Mm.
15th sort of shows that I didn't think they'd be in a relegation battle. I never thought they'd do as well as they did. So,
No, absolutely not, absolutely not. But yeah, fair play to Nottingham Forest, and yeah, the Conference League, and yeah, it's done one team very very well. I'm sure it will do them. They will all do good as well. Now, a team that was obviously in the Champions League this season, Aston Villa. Um, in a way, it was a shame what happened on the final day against Manchester United. I think when we look back on what their season has been, they've had for some famous nights. Being Bayern Munich, I thought was absolutely fantastic. Obviously, beat PSG wasn't quite enough in the end, but they made Villa Park a real fortress. Looks like potentially Emi Martinez. Looks like he potentially might be on his way. But I've got to say, the player of the season for me, if you're looking at Villa, Morgan Rogers has come from absolutely nowhere because I thought when he was at Middlesbrough, I thought he was a really, really good player.
Mm.
Villa decided to take a punt on him and buy him, and fair play to Morgan Rogers because he's been a shining light in that Villa side. How impressed have you been with Villa this season?
You know what? Actually, I mean, we've had a lot of good results against Villa as Palace, like in both cups, and obviously we had the semi-final. And Villa fans are sick of the sight of us, and they're devastated we're going to be in the Europa League together. But really impressed. And if you think back to the PSG Champions League, where Villa Park came alive that night, and they very nearly salvaged it. And if they hadn't conceded the late third in Paris,
Yeah,
they would have taken to extra time at least. And when you look at Paris Saint-Germain and what they did in that final, it shows how well they did. I think it was a real stamp sort of season for Villa to say we're back. And they'll be disappointed not to get the Champions League. But I think next season, Europa League, yes, Palace are in it, and we're kind of their bogey team. Hopefully, we're in it. Um, but I think that's where that's Unai Emery's home. You know, I think
yeah.
they've got to be one of the favourites for that. He's got a good track record in that, very good track record in that competition. Um, I do want to just cite back to the last day. You alluded to it. That what's the point in VAR if it doesn't? It was brought in because of the money at stake. That's probably one of the biggest money decisions. Like, okay, people will say they didn't play well in that game, but sometimes there's a
Yeah,
saying: good teams grind out results, and they should have gone 1-0 up. And I think if they went 1-0 up, that United team don't have the mentality to come back. People can allude to
no,
their comeback against Lyon, but I think Villa win that. Uh, I I
yeah,
I would be absolutely gutted if I was a Villa fan. Like I said, I think they're still going to have a good season next season, but that was that was probably the most. There's been a lot of probably hundreds of damning moments for VAR. That was the most damning because that's what it was brought in to make sure things like that didn't happen. It costly errors from a referee. It was shocking.
yeah, yeah. I don't think they can have any complaints for the red card, but I think that decision is it's a game changing decision because you look at that you look at by India, he's not got two hands on the ball, he's got one hand on the ball,
Yeah,
um, and I don't get this idea of basically the referee's already blown the whistle. How can VAR not like intervene?
I know it was
Uh,
it's one of those rules that are a bit subjective. Like, has the goalie got control of the ball, and it's open to interpretation. And Palace benefited in the FA Cup final from a similar kind of another kind of thing where is the gut player going in the direction of the goal, etc.
mm,
Um, but for me, it was just clear cut. His hands were not on the ball. It was a
yeah,
goal. And that must have been so hard to swallow as everyone connected with Aston Villa. But as I said, I think that they'll come again, and they've got royalty of fans. I know Prince William did a good little punditry spell for BT Sports when he came on and did his thing
yeah,
in Paris. I think and also the Europa League is another great, as Tottenham has shown, a great route back to the Champions League for them. So it all is not lost for them, but cracking season.
no, yeah, cracking season, and yeah, one they'll remember for a while. And I absolutely love Unai Emery as a manager as well. However, there is one thing that could really stop them. PSR, they do seem to be one of the teams at risk of actually breaching PSR rules. So literally, they have to sell to buy. Um, Out of the team at the moment, which do you think is sort of the more profitable players that they could potentially look to potentially move on? For me, I look at Watkins.
Well,
I
yeah.
think there was talk that he was potentially going to go in sort of January.
Well,
Um,
that was interesting. He got dropped for Rashford at points in the Champions League. So
mhm,
you could look, maybe they would sell Watkins, who I think they could get about 80 million for.
yeah,
and buy Rashford for about 40 and make a 40 million profit.
Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the areas where PSR, it's almost like PSR is just keeping the top six where they are. Because how are United being able to buy all these players when they're meant to have financial difficulties, and
yeah,
keeping clubs like Villa who are progressing from progressing? That's where it gives scope for the argument that all PSR does is keep the top six in a nice position, and it makes it hard for
yeah,
teams to break through.
yeah, 100%. But I think apart from that, I think Villa should be okay. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah.
So where did everyone have Aston Villa? May I ask? I had them fourth. I actually thought that they would actually. Well, we didn't know at the time that it was going to be like a top five. Um, so they were up there the very last game week of the season, and they fell at the final hurdle, which was a real shame. But I had them fourth. Um, Craig had them sixth, spot on. Well done, Mr. Beasley. You've got that one spot on. Um, Ali, you had them 10th. Was
That
this because of obviously like balance in Champions League and Premier League?
that was
Is that
exactly it.
why you had them 10th?
I felt they would struggle to balance the Premier League
Mm,
and the Champions League, and yeah, I was really wrong because, as I said, I think they should have got fifth.
yeah, I agree. And Tone, sixth as well. So very well done to Tone and Craig, who had them very close. And then obviously I had them in the very last weekend that they managed to fall out, which was very disappointing. But on to another team who did end their trophy drought. Yes, at the expense of Liverpool, but I've got nothing bad to say about that game because they absolutely thoroughly deserved to win that game. Um, and I was so happy for any Geordie that went to that game.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
70 years of hurt. It was just they played amazingly throughout the season as well. Um, but I get people say they were a bit lucky on the final day, losing to a good Everton side as well. But overall, the season, I think you can quite clearly see that Newcastle did definitely deserve Champions League football. And I've got to say, the one player that really makes them tick in midfield, and he'll feel like a new signing next season, because basically with what the sort of the betting ban that he had, Sandro Tonali, he really makes them tick in midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a little story about that Newcastle winning the Carabao Cup. So I was in London and watched the game, the second half, in a bar just outside of London Bridge, Redwoods Bar, which is one of the big sports bars in London. And both floors were full of Newcastle fans who made the journey to London without a ticket. And it was almost, to me, looking back now, having been through what I've been through in the last few weeks of Palace winning the FA Cup, a prelude to what we'd go through. There was families in tears. It was just amazing to see their love for the football club. And I think it's also a lesson for me, and don't judge fans on social media. Because like Palace and Newcastle fans have been at each other all summer about Mark Gahey, and Newcastle fans are great. Like, because I actually went up to Palace Newcastle when we lost 5-0, and their fans that day were great. After the game, they were like, "Go and win the FA Cup now." They're brilliant, and as much as people have issues with where their money comes from, and myself included, you can't begrudge that fan base a bit of joy. And it was amazing to see, and they were also very impressive. When I went up to Newcastle, I couldn't believe really how efficiently they dispatched us. We
Mm.
did get a penalty where Eze should have equalised and did this ridiculous penalty, which actually turned out to be very useful for Palace because we learned how to deal with missing a penalty when Mateta missed one in the FA Cup semi-final. But they were seriously impressive. I was surprised at how good they were, and I think my biggest disappointment so far with the transfer window, I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but for Brentford in Bumo, I, I I think he would be perfect for Newcastle. Like, why is he choosing Man United? Like, get on that right hand side for Newcastle with Isaac in the middle, and that he would have been a cult hero there. I just
Yeah,
cannot, for the life of me, understand that his decision. And that's the next step for Newcastle. Really, is they do need a couple more signings, and that's going to be key to them whether they can get them, because they were frustrated by Palace in the transfer market last summer for Mark Gahey. I think the feeling is they need a centre back and a right sided player to really kick on.
yeah, I think so. I mean, there's been talk that Livramento might potentially go,
Yeah, I've
but I
seen that.
think I think you'd be looking at ridiculous money for Livramento.
Mm.
I think you'd probably be looking between sort of 80, 90 million. I know City are obviously
The other,
sniffing.
the other whisper, Dougie, is Anthony Gordon to Liverpool, because Anthony Gordon's family are
Mm,
all Liverpool fans, and he's been quite open about that and how difficult it was for him to play for Everton. And you do feel like at some point maybe that might be a move. And then there's talk that if Anthony Gordon did go, they'd get Jack Grealish.
yeah, to be fair, I think Jack Grealish would do well at Newcastle.
I think Newcastle should be aiming to hang on to Anthony Gordon and their best players. But again, they're impacted a bit by PSR and can't do what they want to do. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
but no, I've got to say Newcastle had a fantastic season. Double over Manchester United. I don't think I know quite a couple of teams that did the double over Manchester United. Bournemouth obviously being one of them, but yeah, Newcastle. I think it was 2-0 at Old Trafford, and then I think they smashed them 4-1 at St James's. It was very very good, but no, Alexander Isak as well, finishing second behind Mo Salah in the
yeah,
Golden Boot.
yeah, proper player, proper
23
player.
goals.
He's the one
Brilliant.
they cannot. I don't care what teams bid for him. They need to hang on to him if they are serious about moving on to the next level. They have to hang on to him. And they did get away with it on the last day, but I was surprised at that result. That was a real shock of a result on the last day when they lost
Mm,
to Everton. But he's a serious player, and he was unbelievable in that final.
it was great. It was absolutely great. So, where did everyone have Newcastle? I had them seventh, so not a million miles away. Um, Craig, I, I'm pretty sure Craig has got like a magic mystery ball or something, because he's actually got Newcastle fifth
No way.
for probably the Eddie Howe factor. So very very well done to Craig. You had them sixth, so again not a million miles away, and Tone had them fourth. So I, I'm I'm happy with my Newcastle prediction actually. Um, Obviously, Champions League next season will be interesting to see how well they can balance the Champions League, the Premier League. So, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of squad they've got um,
Yeah,
as well.
but yeah, I mean,
So,
just the last thing on Newcastle, Eddie Howe's stock's gone right up, hasn't it?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I think if you listen to Talk Sport, there's loads of people asking for him to take over from Thomas Tuchel afterwards, and I can see it. I can definitely see it. So a team who I think have had a very good season, Chelsea. Um, Now I know I will have loads of Chelsea fans looking at me and say, "Why on earth did you predict us ninth?" Well, at the time, I didn't think you were a very very stable team. You had just got obviously Enzo Maresca. Um, but one thing I did say that they were the favourites for the Conference League, and obviously they won it at a canter with 4-1 against Betis in the final. But I've got to say something. I think Enzo Maresca has proven a lot of people wrong this season. I think people had him for like the fall guy. I think people had him potentially to be sacked first. But you've got to give credit where credit's due. He's taken a very young Chelsea side,
Mm.
and actually, when you look at it, finishing fourth is a very good achievement.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to predictions in a moment. This is probably one of my best ones, but I said that I think in the podcast I felt Maresca had been underestimated for the job he did at Leicester, but there was a bit of a mirror image in both seasons in that he started really well at Leicester, started really well at Chelsea, then had this dip where fans started to doubt, started to get disillusioned with the style of play. And then he had a little surge again at the end, like he did at Leicester to get the league over the line. And at Chelsea had that surge, he got fourth over the line, and then they win the Conference Cup. But if you look at his achievements, he's as a manager, he's won the league with Leicester, the Championship, with 100 points, over
Yeah,
100 points and over. He's come fourth with Chelsea and won the Conference Cup. Now, if you said to a Chelsea fan at the start of the season, you're going to get back in the Champions League and you're going to win the Conference Cup, that's bullseye really for them for their season in what they
yeah,
need to achieve.
absolutely. And actually, when you look at the, um, I think Cole Palmer had a good season, tailed off a little bit. Like he had a bit of like a middle period where he didn't look like he could hit a barn door. But
Yeah, that was odd.
he's had a
Yeah,
good
he
season.
did.
The one player I think has got to be mentioned, and I think a lot of people looked at the price tag and thought, right, this is a real heavy price tag. But I thought Moises Caicedo,
Yeah,
I thought he was absolutely brilliant in that Chelsea team this season.
yeah, and I remember talking about this because I know, as I said, we'll come into predictions in a moment. But one of the reasons I predicted Chelsea where I did was because of that central midfield. And I mentioned as well, Casado, Enzo is a clever player, and then I said key to them for them would be to get Lavia back fit, and they did for
Yeah.
spells of the season because I said that midfield three for me is one of the best in the Premier League, maybe just under
Mm.
Liverpool's. Um, and yeah, I mean, squad wise, the players they've got, I felt they had enough to get the Champions League, and they did just get it over the line. Almost dipped at the end. To be honest with you, about 5 games to go, I started to doubt it because he looked at
Yeah.
the run of fixtures that they had. It didn't look favourable for them. But Maresca, to be fair to him again, got it over the line, and I think Leon Dalap's going to be a great signing for them. I saw him at Sellers
Yeah.
Park, and he's got it all for a striker. He's strong, holds the ball up, has pace, can get in behind, and he also worked with Maresca and Palmer at Man City.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's it'll be very interesting to see what Chelsea do.
Yeah,
I still have doubts over their sort of their striker position. I think they need a real out and out number 9. Look, I think Delap will be a very good signing. Don't get me wrong, but I do think it needs just someone experienced. Look like they're getting excuse my French if I pronounce this wrong. Mike Maignan from
they've
AC
got to.
Milan looks like that.
If they're serious about doing anything, they've got to sort the goalkeeper position out
Yeah,
because
I don't know Robert Sanchez.
how they have got top 5, top 4 with him in goal. I mean, Maresca needs kudos just for that, really. Like,
Yeah, give him, give him the freedom at Chelsea that he's had. Well,
yeah,
he's had Robert Sanchez, Jorgensen, who I'm like little bit skeptical about. Obviously they've had Petrovic out on loan at
mm,
Strasbourg. Kepa, who we will get to, has decided to go
yeah.
to Arsenal for some unknown reason. Um, no, I think Maresca has done a magnificent job. So yeah, I'll enjoy this one. Not. Where do we have Chelsea? I had them ninth, but I did have my reasons at the time, so I will say that. But yeah, very poor prediction for me. Craig had them eighth. Ali, you had them fourth.
Bang on.
So very well done.
I
I
said
think yeah, I think that is your best prediction.
that and predicting the whole bottom three correctly. It was my finest moments.
Yes, I think so. And Tone had them seventh. Had them seventh. So yeah, very well done. Now to a team. Well, I think it's safe to say, Ali, this has been a major drop off. Manchester City, and I can only look to one thing, Rodri. How big an injury was that to derail their season?
Yeah, it massively didn't help. At the same time, I don't know. I was thinking about this earlier. I think the hunger ebbed from them a bit. Like, last season they had the hunger to break that record of consecutive seasons. It looked to me like the hunger had gone from certain players. Guardiola's relationship with certain players has ebbed, like Grealish. Foden's been nowhere near as good. Haaland
Yeah.
also got injured at a key point to the season. I don't know whether it might not have been as bad a drop off, but I still think they might have had a drop off even if Rodri was fit. But it
Mm.
definitely was an impact, and it now feels like Guardiola's building a new team.
Yeah. I mean, eight Nuri, Reinders, Chirky, look like they're all going to be signing very, very soon as well. The goalkeeping position is very interesting, though. It does look like, if I'm reading correctly, it looks like Ederson and Ortega are both staying. Are you a
Yeah.
bit surprised by that?
Well, I also read that Donnarumma might come in, but I think I read that they were staying, so a little bit. Um, I did. Yeah, I also felt like I think Ryan Cherky's a good player, but I think he's a very clever player. But then I think maybe they need a stronger signing than that to really take them to the next level again.
Mm,
I don't know really. I mean, obviously, I watched them at Wembley in the FA Cup, and what I would say is they had a lot of possession, and Doku would get the ball down the left hand side, but he wouldn't do anything with it. Like
hmm
he wouldn't go anywhere. Like they were just missing that bit of magic as well. I think they need, and Ryan Cherky's a clever player, so maybe he will bring the X factor again for them. They need Haaland is going to want to be fit and firing. He'll want to win the league again, and
Yeah.
they also need to reinvigorate Foden. Um, and
Oh,
maybe
100%.
someone like Rodri spraying the passes from deep again will do that. So much of their play starts through Rodri. Um, I think I think they will be much better next season. I don't think they'll be a Man City 90 plus points, but I do think they'll be much stronger.
Yeah, I
It
do as
might be
well.
a two year, definitely a 2 year thing, but more 2 3 year thing to rebuild this site. I'm just surprised that I really didn't think Guardiola would be hanging around for it.
No, I had a feeling he would go. I had a feeling he would go, but I think when you spend the money that they did in January, Nico Gonzalez, Kuzunov, as Bears, they've not really played, but their best signing for January for me was the Egyptian lad, Marmoush. I think he's been
It's good.
excellent since
He
he's
didn't have
joined.
a good cut final, obviously, because he missed the penalty. But I definitely think
Mm,
he's a player. He's the one player I think should be in everyone's fantasy football team next season, rather than spending the money on Haaland. Get Bayern Mamouche. So I think he's going to bag them next season.
I think so. I think City will be very, very good to watch next season. So the inevitable question is, where do we predict them? Well,
Mm.
three out of the four of us predicted them to win the league. Myself, yourself, Ali, and Tone. Obviously,
Mhm.
Tone, Manchester City fan, of course. Yeah, we all predicted City to win the league, but Craig predicted them to be second. Because obviously he had the one more team that was to win the title. But yeah, Man City's first trophyless season since 2016, 2017. I know they won the Community Shield, but we don't really count Community Shield
Uh,
as a
uh,
as
I'm just going to correct you there, Doug. That if Palace win the Community Shield in August, we will definitely be counting it as a major trophy.
yeah, yeah, of course, of
And if
course, of
Liverpool
course
could
you
just
will.
maybe let us have it, that would be great because it would mean a lot more to us. Yeah.
That there, yeah, we will see. Yeah, their first trophyless seasons in 2016, 2017, but I think they will be back. So second again, ole ole ole, Arsenal. 74 points, 15 points down from what they had last season. They had
Mhm.
89 points last season. If you thought City's was a real drop off when they had 91, they finished on 71. Arsenal only finished 3 points above Manchester City. Now I know people will look at the injuries. The forward injuries that they had was quite incredible. To lose Saka, to lose Havertz, to almost lose like their entire forward line. Obviously, Mikel Merino, being as played as a sort of a makeshift striker. Um, but again, more question marks about Arteta. It's another trophyless season for Arsenal. Um, are there doubts now to whether Arteta can really take this team over the line? Because this is now his sixth season that's coming up now. He
I think
has to potentially deliver one of the big ones next season.
I think the fairest thing to say is I don't think he deserves to get sacked or anything. That's ridiculous. I think, but I do think next season if he doesn't deliver a trophy, he has to go.
Yeah,
I think it's a
yeah,
sort of Gareth Southgate Euro situation. Like you've got us
mm,
close, but if you don't get over the line this time, it's naturally got to come to an end. But you can't doubt the progress because when he took over, they were flip flopping whether they get top four. He's made that. He has increased the expectations. You definitely have to say that. It's like Southgate gets with England. He increased the expectations, but he needs to. He hasn't somehow got them over the line. What I would say on Arsenal is I never thought they'd win the league this season, and I think I said that. And I think in the predictions at the moment had them one place lower, because I just think psychologically, I know they had injuries as well, but psychologically for them to come back from being so close the season before and being on something like was it like 89 points and still not winning it, I felt
yeah,
would be hard for them because they just thought, well, what can we actually do? Like
yeah,
City are just this superpower, and then it just turned out City weren't this superpower. Yeah, the injuries didn't help, but I still don't think they would have won it. I think Liverpool were too consistent, and we'll talk about Liverpool in a bit in the first half of the season for them anyway. And I did think that they'd have a good season in Champions League, which they did. Um,
yeah.
and again, you look at how well PSG did in the final, and you look at maybe Arsenal against PSG wasn't as bad as people thought. I think that I'm going to make an early prediction. I think Arsenal will win the league next season.
Oh,
Out
interesting.
then,
Um, One of the things though that is very, very concerning if I was an Arsenal fan, 14 draws this season.
yeah,
That's way too many if you want to win a title.
yeah, and I guess that's maybe where what you're saying, their forward line got impacted, and maybe if they had more of their forward line available, they would have converted more of those draws into wins. But also, they need to dip it, and they should have dipped into the transfer market in January and foreseen the situation.
Yeah,
And they need to have some backups. And they don't have Kai Havertz is a false nine. He's not a striker. They
yeah,
don't have I actually remember having this conversation off air with Robbie from Arsenal Fan TV like about 3 years ago, and he said then that Arsenal need like a killer up front. I remember using
yeah.
those words to me, killer. Okay, and they still don't have that killer, and until they get that killer, it's a bit like Chelsea getting that goalie. They aren't going to go to the next level.
No, no, absolutely not. Cisco, is he the answer?
I haven't seen enough of him to know. I know he's got good stats and stuff, but they definitely need to do something. I mean, if I'd be looking at the Galatasaray one, the one who turned down going to Saudi, the one who's been playing in.
Oh, Osimhen.
I think he's the most interesting one out of the available strikers, personally. Um, I think he could have that bit of X factor, but yeah, the one they're going for does sound like a good player. But then you got to think he's not played Premier League football. And maybe
Yeah,
that's where Chelsea are onto a winner with Liam Delap, in that
yeah,
he won't need to adapt to the league. But there are some interesting strikers around. I don't think there's a striker though around in the market where you think that's a surefire thing, unless you went for Isaac from Newcastle, but you're not going to get him. So
yeah, 100%. Kepa. What do you make of Arsenal signing Kepa? Look, I think it's a very good move for a second choice goalkeeper.
it's a great
If
number two.
only he, yeah, if only he wants to be sort of the second choice, because there's no denying that David Raya will be number one next season.
Yeah,
Um, Kepa will definitely be needed. I think it's a very astute signing, but again, it almost feels like forgive me when I say this, but it feels like it's a Chelsea retirement village. Arsenal feels like a Chelsea retirement village for old Chelsea players to
Yeah,
actually go
I
to
know people
Arsenal.
are saying that, but I actually think it's a very good signing for Arsenal. It's a great number two, isn't it?
Yeah.
A great number two. It makes me feel sad when players do that though, because
Mm,
he played well this season for Bournemouth. You know, he's become a number one in his own right. Be a number one somewhere. You know, play every
mm,
week. But I just these players um are happy to be a number two, and it is in a way a great job. You sit on the bench every week and you pick up thousands and thousands of pounds.
yeah.
Um, but it's disappointing in terms of having the ambition to play and make a meaningful career. He will play for me Carabao Cup and FA Cup though.
Yeah,
He'll
100%.
probably be their Carabao FA Cup goalkeeper, and maybe he'll get
Yeah,
a chance to win that, be on the pitch, get substituted for penalties, and refuse to come off.
yeah. So, where do we all have Arsenal? Well, me and Tone had them spot on second. So, yeah, I'll pat myself on the back for that. Craig had them champions. You had them third.
Mm,
Was it because of basically the mentality of like
yeah,
getting 89 points and
exactly.
then
Yeah,
like yeah, but basically it having a bit of having a bit of a drop off.
I think I remember saying at the time I felt that they would drop them in the Premier League, but I felt they'd do well in the Champions League, and they did get to semi-finals. They weren't the best team in
Yeah,
it, like Arteta said, but they did have a good European campaign. But as I said,
that's
I think they'll. I think next season, if they can keep Saka fit, I think and get him back to best, I do think that they will be back challenging for the Premier League, and I think they'll win it.
I suppose it all depends on the transfer window. Depends
Yeah, you got to let
who
that
they
go.
can get in.
Tune in for the predictions in August before I maintain with that. But right now, I've just got a feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. But first, I never saw this coming, and I'm delighted when it happened. Liverpool first Premier League champions, number 20, has come home. Well, I'll firstly I'll say this: I didn't predict this to win the league. I don't think anyone predicted this to win the league. Arne Slot coming in, taking over from a real great manager, Jurgen Klopp. Pardon the pun, but he slotted in really, really perfectly. We did make any signings. The only signings was really made was Chiesa,
How long have you been
Mamardashvili, who's obviously coming in next season.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the one thing what I will say, the emergence of Ryan Gravenberch as a number six. I
Unbelievable.
think he's been absolutely fantastic. I know that obviously he did get sent off on the final day. I think he misses the Community Shield, if my memory serves me correctly. So he will miss the Community Shield. But what a fantastic season that he's had. And yeah, Mo Salah has now won his fourth Golden Boot. That is equaling the great Thierry Henry. So one more, he will surpass Thierry Henry for Golden Boots. I mean, fair play to you, Ali, because out of the four of us, I think three of us predicted us to finish third, but
Mm.
you thought that we would be sort of almost City's major challengers, but in the end, we were basically top from week 10 onwards.
Yeah, to be fair, I think I put you second more because I just felt Arsenal would struggle, as I said, with the mentality of what happened the season before, rather than opposed to thinking you'd do as well as you did. I think you've nailed the key things. The central midfield didn't see that the emergence of those players in that central midfield. I
Yeah,
thought that was a weakness of yours. Although I do think I always thought I hate to say as former Brighton, McAllister is a very clever player, and I think I said Chelsea central midfield is strong, but I think Chelsea's is second behind Liverpool's in terms of strength. And then I think don't want Liverpool fans and yourself to take this the wrong way. I don't think it is a generational title winning team. Like they're not going to go down with
mm,
some of the United or the Invincibles or the 97, even the 97, 98 Arsenal team. But what I would say is you were unbelievably consistent in that first half of the season. And Mo Salah has put himself in right up the top of the Hall of Fame of Premier League players as a generational player. He's right in that elite of the elite sort of category now. His stats are insane. Um, and I think, the other thing I'd say is Allison. Every time I see him play at Palace. He's like a cheat code. He's unbelievable. Like, he's unbelievable. Virgil van Dijk as well is in that Premier League Hall of Fame. He gets in my all-time 11 of the Premier League. And, I think you've got a chance to continue it now. Trent will be a big loss in terms of
Yeah.
creativity. He will be a loss. I know Bradley's good, but he will be a loss. But I think as well, it seems like the signings are going to be happening. There's already one almost over the line from Germany. Looks like a very good signing. So I think now with Van Dijk and Salah signing on, which some really doubted they would, that you're going to be right up there again next season.
Yeah, I'm excited for the summer. I think we've been needing a summer where we basically need to be spending. It's been a long, long time where I've been actually looking at the club actually spending 100 million plus
Mm,
on one player. But the money has been there. The money's been saved up for a number of years, and
mm,
I think it's safe to say, the last time we won the league in 1920, we didn't really strengthen. Like Adrian came in, we had Vandenberg, Harvey Elliott came in.
yeah.
Um, you know, we and obviously like Tiago and I think
Mm,
Jota came in that summer as well. But we didn't really strengthen it, and obviously the problems happened. With obviously Van Dijk again is obviously ACL. I think Van Dijk has been fantastic. I know people would obviously look at Mo Salah being obviously the player of the season. Had it not gone to Mo, it'd probably go to Van Dijk. Um, and obviously Allison for me, still for me, he's the best goalkeeper in the Premier League. Um,
yeah.
and I think as well he'll be a mentor to Marmadashvili who's coming in. I've seen Marmadashvili only really for like the Georgia national team. I know he's played for Valencia. There's
Mm,
been a bit mixed uh,
yeah.
things about him in Spain, but if you're coming into a Liverpool side who's getting a couple of new players in. Of the front Paul's the first one to come in. Verts looks like that's going to be happening. Kirkes looks like that could be happening. Sorry, Craig. I know you'll obviously be watching and listening, but that looks like it's going to be potentially happening. And then there's a case of just outgoings. Who, as I've said, Harvey Elliott looks like he's potentially one of the ones to
Mm,
go out next season. Look, the one thing I will say, and obviously we do have the Community Shield coming up in August, which I still can't believe I'm saying that it's Liverpool Palace
yeah, it's going to be
in the
amazing.
Community Shield.
And it's going to be an amazing atmosphere in the
Yeah,
Wembley. I mean, obviously, like, we've had a lot of praise for the atmosphere we created. I think which was unbelievably special. But I mean, the parade that you went to looked
yeah,
incredible. And I'm sorry, City fans, but your atmosphere was pathetic at Wembley. I'm excited. Both times I've done a final of anything has been Man United in 2016, who were pathetic. Man City's
yeah,
absolutely pathetic. I think Palace and Liverpool at both ends, it's going to be unbelievable.
yeah. It certainly will be. And obviously, as you've mentioned, I was in Liverpool for the final game. Didn't get a ticket, but I was actually like outside Anfield, and you just wouldn't have thought like a game had been was actually going on because it was a real party atmosphere between both sets of fans.
Yeah.
I was like I was passing Palace fans and they were just like shaking your hand. It's like, oh, well done in the Premier League, and we were like, well done in the FA Cup.
And
So
they had the double respect tunnel, didn't they? Like when the players came out, where they both did
yeah,
a guard of honor. Like, that was nice touch.
that was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. But no, I didn't see us winning the league, but fair play, and it's absolutely
And it's
amazing to
and a big one.
equal Manchester United.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 2020, isn't it? Now is it? How many times have you won it now? Is it 20?
We've won it, 20 times. 20 times. They've won it 20
They've won it
times.
20.
So
You've won it 20. So next season's gonna be interesting. Can you get ahead of them? I know it's very early, but I know I've just said I think Arsenal will win it, but I think it'll be a much better tie race. I think you could have I think you'll have at least three. I see. I don't think Man City are gonna. I think they'll be a lot better, but I don't think they'll be at the level where they get 90 plus like they've been previously. I don't think they'll be quite there yet. I could see them
Mm-hmm.
being high 80s. I could see Arsenal improving and getting high 80s again. I could see Liverpool being high 80s. I could think it'd be really tight. If Chelsea get a goalkeeper, you never know. They'll be might be there or thereabouts. Like I think it'll be a much better title race next season. That's going to be my biggest call for next season. But yeah, well, fair play to you, mate. I think Liverpool, they really deserved it. Fair play to Slot. First season, unbelievable. And it was great to see the relationship between him and Klopp. Because if you think
Yeah.
about any job, you have to transition from the previous person in the role, or it's always important. Like they just both had the football club at heart and not egos, and that in some way sums up what Liverpool is about. Really, I just think it was a great season, but I think you won it in the first half of the season. You were just so consistent from, like you said, game week 10 to game week 20. Probably it was just like bam, 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 and that's what you won it. And then City obviously had their issues. Arsenal had their issues, and you
Yeah.
made them pay for them.
Yeah, I said to a couple of people that I thought the league was won when we beat Manchester City away. As I think if people were saying that our record at the Etihad wasn't great. I think Arsenal had lost to West Ham on that
Yeah,
weekend, and we beat Manchester City, and we went I think 13 points clear at that point, and then
yeah.
there was no coming back. Um,
And I guess
I
maybe because it was won in COVID, but people underestimated that you'd won the league before. Like you had players in that dressing room who knew what needed to be done to get it over the line.
mhm,
You had the experience of them,
yeah,
like Allison, and obviously it sounds sometimes what was much. We talk around the house about football. Sometimes it's simple. Big players win leagues, and that's what Salah in a way did.
oh, Salah was just unbelievable, breaking record after record. And honestly, I think he could go really, really close to Harry Kane. I really, really do. I think that if he has a season like he did last season, then I think he could reach Harry Kane levels. But as I said, people did predict Liverpool. Myself, Craig, and Tone all predicted Liverpool to be third. You predicted them to be second. So yeah, hats off to Liverpool and Arne Slot. And that wraps things up. The 24-25 Premier League season is over. A season where teams ended their trophy droughts. Congratulations to Palace. Congratulations to Newcastle. Um, Ali, it has been an absolute pleasure to do
Yeah,
this podcast with you. I
I'd
really,
love
really
to do it
appreciate it. And
again.
obviously, big thanks to Craig and Toad for doing that in August. But yeah, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on Pride of South London Fan TV. I've got a lot of YouTube shorts at the moment. If you want to have a look of the cup final and the semi, and Palace fans in Covent Garden before, which is great. Gonna try and do like my player of the season and stuff very soon. Yeah, come and check us out. We went over 1K this season, which was great. So yeah, come and check us out on Pride of South London Fan TV. But thank you for having me on this. I really enjoyed it at the start of the season. I'll be looking forward to doing this one as well. And yeah, I'd love to come on for the predictions for next season. I know I've already started making a few already in this podcast. But yeah, the season that Crystal Palace won the FA Cup.
Absolutely, yeah. You'll be more than welcome. We'll be more than welcome, and yeah, we'll definitely meet up in a time in
Yeah.
August and
Maybe let's
make
try and get Neil involved. Or like,
that
can we
would be
get,
good. Yeah,
it'd be good to
that
have
would
Neil.
be very, very good.
We've got to give Leicester fans something at the moment.
You
It's
do,
not really
you
good
do, you do
stuff.
as well. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for listening, and then obviously watching. Please do leave a like on the video. Obviously, press the follow button as we're in your feeds every single week. But that was the 24-25 Premier League season. We'll see you next season. Take care. Bye bye. For now.